So the question is really about conversion, old life and new life. And when you become a Christian and you're moving from wickedness to righteousness in your orientation. By the way, it's always a mixed bag, okay? When we say wicked and righteous, we're saying where's your inclination or your commitment? When we're saying you're making a commitment to righteousness, we're not saying you are righteous or that you're going to always be perfectly righteous. What we're saying is that you've made a decision that is now going to affect all other decisions. Just like when you make a covenant to purchase a house. Like once you make that decision, it affects a whole lot of other decisions in life. When you decide to get married, it affects a whole lot of other decisions in life, right? So conversion is a decision that's going to affect other decisions, and it's a commitment to pursue this path, the path of righteousness rather than the path of wickedness. Doesn't mean you're always going to get it right. But the question you're asking, I think, is really good. Sometimes conversion means that we're coming out of what came before into a whole new reality. And when we're leaving old friends, old temptations, old life into a new reality, it's kind of like, wow, look at this. Everything's different and it's rosier and it's easier. It looks like the new life, right? That doesn't always happen. Sometimes God does a work on your heart and then plops you right back into the old environment. And the only thing that's really been recycled is your heart. So you've gone from a heart of stone to a heart of flesh. You've been made alive here. You've been given a different agenda or allegiance or whatever it might be, but everything still looks the same, smells the same, seems the same. And what does that really mean? How do you navigate that? That was actually the first 2 years of faith for me. And the analogy, so I was in the fraternity, so that's like, the den of wickedness or whatever. And then got plopped right back into the fraternity for another 2 years. And something interesting happened. I started, in that time, I had a mentor that told me to study, you want to be a shepherd or a leader someday, study all the biblical passages on sheep or being a shepherd. So I did. Ezekiel 34, Psalm 23, John 10, going and looking at historical things of shepherds in the ancient Near East, and just what is that whole thing, looking at David and David as a shepherd, Psalm 23. And something really interesting came out in that, and that's that when a particular sheep tends to wander regularly, there's an instance where a shepherd will break the leg of the sheep, put that sheep on his shoulders, and carry that sheep with the broken leg around for a while. And then when he puts that sheep back down, when it's had enough time to mend, the phenomena is that particular sheep now stays right next to the shepherd, never wanders away. And so I learned this as I was going through exactly the instance of your question. And I began to realize that was my life, right? So I was prone to wander, and for me it was a broken jaw that was the wake-up call. So it's like the leg, right? And I think sometimes the farther we are from God, the louder he has to scream to get us, or the more radical it is. I think the road to Damascus experience with Paul is a really crazy experience, but it's partly because Paul was so far from being where he needed to be. When you jerk something from a ways off, it's different than when it's right here, right? So I think sometimes those crazy experiences, breaking a leg, is because you're prone to wander and you're on the edges. So for me, it was a broken jaw, like the broken leg. I went and worked a summer at a Christian summer camp, which was a very difficult time for me, and I leaned really heavy into the Lord, and it was like that whole experience of being carried around for a summer, 3 months. And then all of a sudden, late August, I show up back at Clemson University, right back to where I left. Same group of people, same sights, smells, sounds, tastes, everything. And it was funny. I was terrified about what that was going to look like. I had people praying for me that I would stand strong and stand firm and that I'd make it work. And when I got there, all of a sudden it was like, wow, all of this is the same, but I'm different. Like I don't want it anymore. And it actually doesn't really have the same allure to me that it used to. Like I I want to go get in my room and read my Bible. Like, I want to pray. And I'm seeing a lot of people, and I'm going, man, it's really sad that they're living these lives, and those are the outcomes. I know how sad that is because I used to be sad. I used to be the one with the broken life, right? And I used to, at that point, then grieve for those people. And so it was a really interesting thing. But without that season away to heal and to recalibrate, I think Jesus putting me right back in the middle of the flock wouldn't have turned out as good. But that's kind of the story. So what does it look like if you're in a culture that influences you, not for the good, and you have an experience of conversion? There has to be something that strengthens you and prepares you to be put right back into this environment that used to influence you, but now you're going to influence it, or at least be able to withstand whatever influence it's trying to exert on you. And so when and if that arises, I pull people away and say, listen, you've got to find a season, you've got to find some people, you've got to find some ways to be strengthened up and mended, and to find your identity in your life with Christ, and then you can move back into these spheres with confidence. If you just get thrown right back in, it would be pretty hard, I think, unless there's a way to get grounded first. But I think that happens all the time. It happened in my life. I know other people that's the scenario. But I do think over time, to be honest, like Paul, all his friendships eventually changed, and other people. Like, eventually you begin to find Christian community, and you begin staying away from people that are just really going to choose evil, and that's just that. And you begin to say, I don't want to be a part of that. And I need my Christian community. I'm drawn to that. And so over time, I think regardless of what the early stages look like, whether it's all the way out or whether it's still back in with the old crowd, over time, you're going to begin to find that it changes. The community changes. The people around you change. What that looks like changes. And so that's kind of just a natural part of it that I think happens, and it's on a different time frame, time schedule for everybody, but it tends to slowly move that way. I think it's a great question.